We want to talk about, speaking of the past, going back a little bit. You had wrestled, got into the business, and then took a break for a while. And talking about serving your community, you were, and are a sergeant working in the Army for the United States. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I literally wrestled a show on 9/9 that Saturday. I didn't have one on that Sunday. I was a bartender at that point, so I had closed the bar the night before 9/11, and by the time I woke up, it had already all happened, and I didn't even know what was going on. And then I saw the Pentagon, and once I saw the Pentagon, I'm like, oh, we're at war. And serving our country. My father served, my grandfather served, my great grandfather was a big time war hero in Italy. That's how my family even got to this country in World War I. He went from like 15,000 something on the list to like number 12. And literally the moment World War I ended, my great grandfather was on a boat coming here to America. So I just felt it was my time to do my part. And I was only 21 at the time. I had already 2 years almost in the business. Like I knew if I took and stepped away for a couple years, it wasn't going to hurt me. Plus, I'm going to add in all of that military discipline, which, a lot of professional wrestlers, don't have a lot of discipline besides working out and showing up to the show. It's this is why we're professional wrestlers. We're usually not good at authority, which it was a huge adjustment for me coming from basically being a pro wrestler on the road to joining the army. Um, but yeah, off we go. 3 years. I thought I'd be gone for. Three became five. Five became seven. And now I'm getting close to the age where if you're not on the WWE's radar, and now the WWE is the only game in town. If you're not on the WWE's radar, then you're probably going to end up being too old. At this point, I had met a girl as I was transitioning out of the army. I'm getting married, wanting to start a family, and maybe it's not the best time right now to go on the road. So I just stuck it on the shelf and left it there for a long time. And it stayed there until January of 2020. I ended up buying the Royal Rumble that year. This is right before COVID and the world turns off. I buy the Royal Rumble. I go away on a business trip 3 days later. I come back from the business trip. My wife's telling me she's been sick the whole time. She's asking me if she looks yellow. I'm like, yeah, you do kind of look yellow. It's like, maybe I need to go to the doctor. Yeah, maybe you should. We go to sleep that night, wake up the next day, her eyes are yellow now. Now the whites of her eyes are now yellow. And right to the emergency room. We would then spend the next 3.5 months, I think, in the hospital. They wanted to remove her appendix, her gallbladder, a kidney. Then they narrowed it down to the liver, and she was now on the liver transplant list. Regular medications were doing nothing to her except for making her break out in rashes. But the whole time we're in the hospital, we're watching wrestling. And me and my wife never really spoke about this because my wife knows the soldier. She met me while I was a sergeant in the army. She just knows that this was something I was doing before I joined the army. And I might get back to it, probably not, because we're gonna, start this family right here. And then by the time this happens, I'll be way too old. To make a long story short, my kids fall in love with wrestling at this same point in time. So now while we're in the hospital, we're watching the app with all the wrestling on it. They're at their grandmother's house. They're watching the app with all the wrestling on it. We get out of the hospital a week before the world shuts down from COVID, and we spend the next month and a half, 2 months at home as a family, literally watching wrestling all day, every day. And by the end, now I'm lifting again, right? Now I'm like, even in my brain, I'm like, I can't let the boys see me like this. Like if I ever saw one of these guys again and I looked like this, I would be embarrassed. Let me start working out, right? Now I'm starting to get results. And now I'm trying to talk myself out of it. Like now you're too old, you know, you've missed your window. You missed your window. You're okay with missing your window. And then I took my kids just to the Royal Rumble in 2024. And I'm telling my wife, this is how I got bit. I went when I was 4 years old, and that was it. And now they're already talking. This is all they want to do. They want to be pro wrestlers, but they've never seen it live. So the world's back on, full arenas. Let's get him to the Rumble. We get him to the Rumble. I'm sitting there for about a half hour, and I'm like, I'm gonna end up back in the ring by the end of this year. I know it right now. I'm gonna be end up in the, and I was August of that year. I was at the 3D Academy after listening to Bubba on the radio on that Busted Open program. I knew that he was still teaching pro wrestling the way I learned pro wrestling, and that was the only thing I would be interested in going back to start again. His trainer's Randy Shawn. Um, Quick friends, like we're best buddies, like we knew each other for 25 years. He broke in the same time I broke in, only he kept going, and I went off and had a family and did the army thing. And he got me up and running. I had him start me from scratch, like I had never learned anything. Even though you'll never have to teach me how to sell ever again. You'll never like ring psychology. Always something to learn, but already have the basics in my pocket, right? So we started from scratch and worked our way back up. I actually had my first match back in the Monster Factory just to close like the chapter on the life on that book, and then I've spun off from there. And within the last 3 or 4 months, I started working for Paul Roma. After one show with Paul, he pulled me aside and he's like, "You got to come down, and me and you got to work on some things. Like I like this. This is what I like. You're an old school wrestler. There's not very many of you floating around. Come through the school and let me tighten up a couple things." So that's now brought me into the PAPW fold, which is Paradise Pro Valley Wrestling. And now, I got Paul, I got 3D, I got Paul, all kinds of people helping me out now. And then this is how the podcasting stuff started. Because again, I'm an analog man in a digital world. I wasn't even on the internet. I didn't have a social media account for myself. I've never done any of that stuff until about August of this year.
Wow. So you're just making your way now into the wrestling industry as a rising star, and I think that's so cool. Having that background in the army. I've had wrestlers on in the past that have done that line of work before they became wrestlers, but this is the reverse situation. So I am sure, like the training that you got as a wrestler helped prepare you for something as big as work as being in the army.
Oh yes, and again, the old school way of training, where you're getting jumped into this thing. So the army was just being told what to do and where you got to be at what time, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That was my biggest hurdle to overcome. But once I overcame that hurdle, I was good to go there for the rest of the way.
Well, let's talk about how you were able to serve your community being in something like that because you're there every day risking your life and trying to defend our country. And so being able to take on that huge, huge task, what was like the most rewarding thing about your time serving our country in the army?
We were the only all volunteer military that joined to go fight during wartime. In this country, it's always been a draft. You were always drafted, whether you go all the way back to the beginning in 1776, they're drafting people. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea. Desert Storm just happened. That was something where you were in, that went down, and like 2 weeks later, it was over. You didn't know that was coming. It just happened while you were serving. Not to take anything away from what happened in Desert Storm, but what we did at that point in time in American history and in world history, we were an all volunteer force and we were fighting wars in 3 countries simultaneously at the same time that the American people even know about.
Are there any causes that mean a lot to you that you are involved with as far as like charity or things in your community that you've been able to help with? Both.
I've started this and got back into this, and one of my goals is to start bringing more awareness to veteran suicide. I feel like veterans are coming back from combat, and we're getting left behind. And I think there needs to be way more systems in place tracking what is going on with my brothers and sisters who volunteered to go fight your wars for you, to make sure that they're not left behind. And that's something that we strive for in the military when we're in combat is to leave nobody behind. And I feel like once we're getting out and getting back into the civilian world, some of my brothers and sisters from what they've done are getting left behind. And I'd like to really raise the awareness to the point where we're really doing something about that, not just talking about it.
Was there a particular instance or an example that you may have of something that you experienced while you were serving in the army that might be related to this issue?
Well, guys that that have been blown up, because it's usually blown up. It's usually not bullet holes. You've been blown up by a roadside bomb, and you're missing an appendage, and now you went from being this alpha fighting male who literally stepped up and was almost paid the highest price to now, you know, what they'll say to me, being a cripple. And you're not a cripple, you're a Purple Heart who gave almost the ultimate price, but you survived, type of thing. And I unfortunately know way too many people that's happened to. And again, systems need to be in place so that this doesn't continue to happen in the future.
Hmm.